All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us, for everyone who's able to make it, and just welcome you guys to our quarterly DEIA committee meeting. We have a really nice agenda planned for everyone today. We're celebrating also Black History Month, which is a critical time in American history, and a lot of people who have paved a lot of ways for our infrastructure, our society, and we'll have a full panel discussion that will dive directly into some of the areas where we have entrepreneurs, but we also have people who are supporting vulnerable populations, and then also individuals that who have been through, who have also experienced and been through, systemic oppression and issues when it comes to just navigating the workforce, and we're looking at how employers are working differently with historically marginalized populations. So full agenda, and then following that, we'll have a update from our DEIA committees, which will hopefully keep those remarks brief. We have a jam-packed agenda, but I'm really excited about the panel discussion that'll take place shortly after. And then we also want to welcome, I'll pass on to Jay shortly, but I also want to welcome, Wex Alexander, who will also be co-chairing the DIA committee along with Mr. Williams, and then also Cindy Bigelow. And I'll turn it over, and then I'll provide an update on our impact marketing campaign and how we're reaching vulnerable populations, which we're very proud of, and then provide an update on our Women Back to Work economic plan and where we are as that preliminary plan is being updated and socialized across our stakeholders. And I'll turn it over to you, Jay, just to kick us off.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Anthony. I also welcome and greet everyone. Thank you for joining us. We never take for granted the time that you allocate. Also want to send a special welcome to our new co-chair, Wes Alexander. Wes, good to have you in this capacity. Excited about everything that you have done, will continue to do, and bring to this work in this space. So with myself and Cindy and others, just excited to have you. So as Anthony talked about, we've got a full agenda. Part of what I will do is look to help keep us on time and on task so we can respect everyone's time. We know that some of our colleagues have already indicated they need to jump off early, which is perfectly fine. We're happy with the time that they're able to spend with us for the time that they're here. So that being the case, and following the agenda, our charter presentations from our 5 working groups will start us off. And after the charter presentations, which will go till about 10 minutes after 2, if necessary, we will then get into the second part of the agenda, which will start with some brief opening remarks from one of our well-known colleagues, Pastor AJ Johnson, who will then also be a part of a panel discussion that I'll moderate as we get into the second part of the agenda before we head then to the close. So thanks, Anthony, and I'll turn it over to you just to walk us through with the charter chairs, the presentations that we'll engage in until just about 10 minutes after 2.
All right, so can you advance the slide? Next, we'd just like to bring up our reentry committee and someone just to provide an update on where we are. I'll turn it over to Earl Bloodworth, who chairs.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? For those of you that are partaking of Valentine's Day, great to you. Me, kind of just another day, but celebrated nonetheless. So thank you for this moment. With reentry, one of the things that we started to kind of focus down on was the vocational programming that the DOC, Department of Corrections of Connecticut, is doing. They have some funding for that. It took a little while to get that up and running, and up and going, because they had to hire a project manager. They just hired a project manager for that. So that programming is moving right along. So we're looking forward to seeing what's going to be done with the pre-release work or programming with that, where they're going to be doing different vocational things in several of the facilities here in the state of Connecticut. And then we also are still working on the employer's toolkit, which we hope to be done with that by the end of this year. We got some additional funding for that from OPM, and we got some partners from Central Connecticut State University that's going to be helping us put that together and shop it around to various employers to have a better understanding through the HR process when hiring the reentry population. And then there are several other organizations or multiple organizations that receive money, roughly $70 million from the state that have programming that will be focused in on the reentry population along with the Career Connects. So as far as the reentry and employment in this, it's going well. So that's all I have. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Earl. Next slide. Next, we'll have, Genevieve, an update for our BIPOC subcommittee.
Hi, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Black History Month, happy Valentine's Day, happy Tuesday, happy life. And with that, just want to share that we are looking to move forward with our long-term goal, which is about employer accountability. So we're looking for job seekers to express what is the best way that employers can align with job market trends, what is happening in terms of the needs for job seekers. We are also looking, much as the slide says quite plainly, what are the pieces of data that are needed so that we can put together the information from job seekers, exactly what is needed so that there is alignment. We are still planning listening sessions. But in terms of the longer term goals, which I think there's another slide, or do we just have it as one? Is there a part B on
No,
this
we didn't
slide?
include the longest.
Okay, got you.
You're-
So what we have is the employer accountability, and which this piece is that we're working for full force in this quarter and moving forward, is how we can get to really highlight for employers what is the benefit for them to accommodate some of the needs of the BIPOC community. So the same questions of how can they both attract and retain members of the BIPOC community. So we're looking at ways that we can also create something of like a blue label, right? Where individual companies are highlighted because of the work that they've done to retain and attract members of the BIPOC community. Also, in addition to what they've done, what are the strides that they're making, and also trying to create resources for companies to continue to do this work, recognizing that this is not easy for companies to do, and also highlighting that it has to make business sense. So this is the work that the committee is doing. We have recently experienced a shift in leadership in our committee, so we'll be looking to go full force ahead the remainder of this quarter and the quarters coming for the rest of the year. I'm happy to answer any questions about that work.
Thank you, Genevieve. Next slide. And I know Lesbia is not able to, be here today, but I know we have Louis on, who's on the call, possibly be able to speak to some of the committee work. If he's not able to, then I can always just kind of elaborate on where we are. I know the Veterans Committee is very, interested in obviously building out further areas when it comes to supporting, veterans in the local towns. She's served as the initial chair, and so while we're on record, I definitely want to say appreciation to all her efforts and supports in standing up the Veterans Committee. And Louis has been a really big champion and brought forth some really thoughtful recommendations on how we can continue to support veterans as it relates to the GI Bill and so forth. So if Louis would like to at least share a few things, I would love to be able to have Louis kind of speak to some of the efforts that he's undertaking.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Pleasure to be joining everyone. Appreciate it. So for the Veteran Subcommittee, I think the big thing here is we're undergoing sort of a reorganization, and we'll look to set up some new metrics and goals heading into Q2. One of the I think first things that we wanted to do was evaluate what are the barriers for employment as it relates to vets. Most of the veterans, or most of the members on the veteran subcommittees, they are veterans themselves. I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years, and so I'm very, very passionate about working with everyone to increase the veteran employment in the state. I reached out to many different businesses and asked, what are some of the barriers that all of you have? And I think the number one thing is identifying vets. So what I think one of the things we want to do in Q2 is identify ways that we can build a pipeline from the bases. When military members are transitioning, they go through something called TAPS or TRS, the Transition Readiness Seminar. And so if there's a way for us to get involved in that process all over the country, we could identify veterans and then bring them to the state that way. I think leveraging some of the things like Connect Connecticut and then the other platforms that we're building out will be very, very helpful. I think, as Anthony mentioned, we're looking at some legislative opportunities, whether it's leveraging the GI Bill, maybe it's looking at legislators to make property tax exemptions for disabled veterans more competitive and some other things like that. We'll continue to evaluate the local VSOs throughout the state and try to find ways to get more service officers in the towns. And I think that those are a few of the ways, but if anybody else is passionate about the topic or wants to engage me, please let me know. And we look forward to being successful this year. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Louis. Next slide. And then now we'd like to introduce Alan who chairs our Person with Disability Subcommittee. And then we'll also have a special presentation from Dave Dukas following his presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for giving us some time. Just a reminder, I am the chair of the Disability Committee. Disability really is a much larger picture. We handle people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who may only work part of the week, all the way on up to people that are looking for 40-hour-a-week work. We have 5 separate short-term goals. One of them is to integrate the job centers. We've recently finished a full tour of the job centers, and I'm waiting right now for a write-up on what we saw and some of the ideas that have come out of that. We also are looking to connect with employers, to demystify and to destigmatize the population that we're supporting, and to let people understand that we are good workers that can do the work and get the job done. Along that line, we have a committee that is looking to engage with employers to show them the value of the population that we're supporting. And there's a presentation that has just been updated, and I'm going to let Dave take over and talk about the windmills presentation that BRS has been doing, and let you guys know how we're going to go forward with taking this out to employers around the state. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Alan, and hello, everyone. Alan said I'm Dave Dukas. I'm part of the DEIA subcommittee and the director of the vocational rehabilitation program within Bureau of Rehabilitation Services. as Alan alluded to, a lot of our discussion has been surrounding the infrastructure that supports individuals with disabilities who are pursuing competitive integrated employment. The increasing of access, the remediation of barriers, the ability to access necessary supports has been an ongoing part of our dialogue. But I'm here today to try to talk to you a little bit about another important issue, and that's really trying to address much of the misperception that exists with employers as they are considering onboarding individuals with disabilities into their workforce. Windmills training is something that is well known in the vocational rehabilitation industry, offered as a national product all around the country. Inside of BRS, we have long railed against the issue of employer misperception when making that determination as to whether or not they'd like to hire an individual with a disability. Windmills training is a way to really get at that. We have 5, 6 of our staff who work directly with employers certified in windmills training, and we have been delivering this around the state to various size companies and entities for some time. What we've done is adapted a rather extensive and lengthy training into what can be delivered in a couple of hours in a kind of an efficient way to employers. The training is all about trying to discover unconscious and unintended bias that exists with all of us as individuals. How do we increase our comfort level in interacting with an individual with a disability is an important step in feeling for an employer to feel comfortable in making that job offer. This training really gets at that in a very safe environment. It allows for the discovery of what each of our unintentional biases may be, and really how to work and interact with individuals with disabilities. The training goes on to talk about how technologies and other techniques can be leveraged into an environment that allows an individual with any type of disability to function most successfully. We talk about inclusion strategies. We talk about the value of hiring individuals within a company and how diversity of a workforce can really increase productivity and effective outcomes for all. There's a lot of, as Alan used the word mystification related to the ADA and accommodations. We deal with that. We talk about how most accommodations are delivered pretty simply at a low cost. And really, we can address how many concerns or fears people may have about the ADA. Next slide. So really, what are the deliverables of this training? Changing perspectives to create a more open-minded approach to working with individuals with disabilities. Identifying strategies for trainees to implement within their own organizations. Every organization is different. Accommodations, individuals with disabilities may look differently or have different roles. So this training can help them adapt those strategies to their environments. We help really kind of pave the way towards the next step towards considering hiring people with disabilities. We've provided this training, as I mentioned before, to companies of all different sizes, and we can certainly talk about what we've done, here in Connecticut. Companies as large as Lego, Travelers, and some as small as like Planet Fitness, local businesses as well. So our proposal out of our committee is that we could hopefully begin with the sector leadership. The industry sector partners committees, offer training to them, and hopefully through a grassroots effort in their interactions with other employers in their industry might be able to turn them on to what we have to offer and start really trying to change some of these perspectives. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Next slide.
Might be helpful if you could hear me. I said, I guess that's me. So Mimi Haley, the chair of the youth subcommittee. Thank you, Anthony, for providing the slide for us. So just as a reminder, our short-term goals are really to increase youth participation and leadership on both the local and statewide level. We've got some drafts of plans that we've been working on. We are still hopeful that we'll be able to identify a source for youth stipends, which has been quite some time that we're waiting for that. So I'm just putting that out there in the universe that we're still looking for youth stipends so we can pay our young people to participate. But we are really exploring, trying to form or, recommend a youth standing statewide youth committee that would represent systems involved youth, disconnected youth, and, often the youth that don't get represented in a lot of committees out there, and that we would be able to, bring them into the planning and design process for different programs that are trying to reach some of the harder to reach young people. And so we think that's a really important piece of this work, and, would welcome any suggestions on how we can move forward with that. We are, hopeful that there are some great youth committees that exist already in the state that are foster care youth, and, is one example through DCF, but we want to try to expand that and make sure that we continue to build that. And there is examples of that in Minnesota that now has a statewide youth committee, and we don't want to be outdone by other states, I don't think. So just putting that out there in the universe as well. So we also came up with recommendations, more immediate recommendations that focus really on supporting mental health and disconnected youth. We just saw the recent report from the CDC on young women and really the rates of suicidality and those that are expressing sadness on a much more frequent basis than they used to. And there's a lot of very important information, I think, to help guide us in the work around mental health. My organization, the National Youth Employment Coalition, also has done a mental health survey on workforce across the country, and the preparedness of our youth employment programs to be able to grapple with the challenge of the crisis in really youth mental health. And that, really reflects, I think, that there's not enough resources out there. We're not connecting as well as we could. We need more training for anybody that's working with young people. We need more possibilities in terms of just simple screenings. And I know that there are some really good work in Connecticut that is happening now. And there's going to be a youth mental health fair in the North West region on, I think it's April 12th, which is exciting, and work like at OPP that is also, exploring, or maybe by this point has brought on an in-house clinician, which is a model that would be great to replicate, that we have worked with other people in the country, that is a cost neutral as long as you can get it paid for by Medicaid, and we can help providers do that. It's a really great option, and I think a critical and urgent one to explore those things more. We also recommended, and we have more specific language on this, but career navigator pilots across the state, and we really believe in navigation. I have, been involved in, standing up some navigation in the world of homelessness, and has been very effective to have those navigators and supporters. And we really believe that this would do well in the state to have career navigators that are more readily available, and will help also with that engagement. And then the expansion of both summer youth employment, but also year-round employment for young people. I've mentioned the statistic before that there's 40,000 disconnected youth. It's estimated in Connecticut. We've got 1,000 approximately 1,000 WIOA slots and a couple more thousand, 2-3 more thousand state funded spots for youth, but we have an awful lot of youth that aren't being served as well. So that also led us to launch a asset mapping that we are now conducting with our workforce, partners in the regions, and are hopeful that we're going to have a state asset map that will, better reflect, all the resources that are available so that we can connect those resources to places like Career Connecticut. And we can also identify the gaps that exist and, in particular, areas where, the zip codes that might not be served as well as others. I'm going to stop there. If you have any questions, I will just put out there in the universe that we would love to have, cross-pollination and really be able to speak with all the other committees, and, really encourage you to think about youth as, we're thinking about justice impacted youth, and we're thinking about youth living with a disability, and, other things as well. We are always happy to include you in discussions or, talk in meetings. We also would love to connect with employers to discuss some of the strategies for both recruitment, retention, and advancement for young people, and come up with some standardized supports for that as a state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. Next slide. All right. Yeah. So we are, first of all, just thank you for all the chairs and Louis for stepping in for Lesbia. Probably going to likely nominate Louis. I think he's been doing a phenomenal job supporting the Veterans Committee, and hopefully he'll accept that nomination and become the next chair for that committee. But overall, just thank you for all the chairs and all the volunteers who support this work and put forth their sweat, equity, and time to make sure that we are moving the state forward and very inclusive in how we're doing, to make sure that we're thinking about all populations and make sure that they're involved in our labor market as it relates to building a skilled workforce for Connecticut. Now, being that we're celebrating Black History Month, I thought it'd be an ideal time to really pull together a really well-informed panelists that goes across many different industries to speak to how do we build inclusive communities, and how do we build communities where individuals feel valued and have a sense of belonging. And I'll turn it over to Jay Williams, who will moderate this panel discussion, and have AJ Johnson probably open us up with a Black History Month remarks, and then we'll transition over to some panel discussion. And probably if we have time, I think we have a little bit of time, and possibly opening up some Q&A if time allows. So I'll turn it over to Jay Williams to kick us off.
Well, thanks, Anthony. And as has been described, we will momentarily have a panel discussion with 4 individuals who have both reputations and bodies of work that are nothing short of impressive and impactful in the entrepreneurial space, in the space of providing opportunities in the corporate space, and in the overall community outreach and engagement. But before we get into the panel discussion, one of the panelists, Pastor AJ Johnson, who is well known, is going to just share with us some brief remarks setting the context of this month that we are celebrating. And there is not, Black history is American history, and the notion that we, no matter what our race, creed, or ethnicity, all benefit from and share, the accomplishments that we have seen over the course of many, many years is not something to take for granted or to be recognized in just one month, but it is important that it is pointed out. So, Pastor Johnson, if you would start us off setting some context, and then I will, each of the panelists will, I'll ask some questions to facilitate some conversation, and we'll do this for the next just about 30 minutes. Pastor Johnson.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you so much to Anthony and to everyone for just allowing little old me to come and talk about something that is just deep in my heart. Black History Month is my month. If you were to meet my two sons, they're 3 and 5, they would sing, lift every voice and sing, and know every verse. We're not starting at the first and then skipping to the third to get through it. They know every verse. And I would encourage each and every one of you, white, black, brown, orange, purple, to learn Lift Every Voice and Sing. One of my favorite pieces that I teach my sons about the song, as beautiful as it is, one of the thing that sets the context for Black History Month to me is we have come over a way that the tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Here's my favorite part. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. When we think about Black History Month, February is dedicated as Black History Month, and we're supposed to honor the triumphs and struggles of African Americans throughout the United States history, including the Civil Rights Movement, okay? And their artistic and cultural and political achievements. This is why this month is so important, because we get an opportunity, which I think is too short, but I'll leave my personal bias out, but we get an opportunity to celebrate the Little Rock Nine. We get a chance to celebrate Althea Gibson. We get a chance to celebrate Weldon B. Johnson, right? James Weldon B. Johnson, who wrote the Black National Anthem. We get an opportunity to celebrate what Black people have done in this country to move us forward. And it's important today that we lift Black voices. It is important today that we lift Black voices in the boardroom, that we lift Black voices in the executive room, that we lift Black voices and Black women in every space possible, because American history would not be American history without the contributions of the many names that we know and the many names that we don't know. So I'm excited. I'm excited to share this moment with you all and the importance of why we need to celebrate our history. I pastor a small little church on the corner of Westland and Barber Street in what I like to call the oldest African-American neighborhood in Connecticut, North Hartford. And my community hasn't regathered since the 1960s. It doesn't look like, my community doesn't look like West Hartford, Simsbury, or Avon. My community looks the same that it looked back in 1965, here in 2023. And so this moment has to be more than just Black history. This needs to be a transformative movement in our organizations, in our communities, that allows us to get the equity and justice that we need. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Pastor Johnson. So Pastor Johnson is also going to participate in the panel. I'll introduce the panelists, just giving sort of a brief description of their role and then get to the question. So as we have heard from Pastor Johnson, pastor of the Urban Hope Refuge Church, we also are going to have participate on the panel our newest co-chair of this committee, Wes Alexander, who is the Vice President of Workforce Solutions at Travelers. We will hear from Andrea Hawkins, who has some corporate experience, but also is an entrepreneur of a growing, shall I say, empire of food and beverage establishments, including the Birkins name, Birkins Blend, Birkins on Oaks and others. Jackie Gallo, who is the COO of Whitcraft. We will hear from her and the important role she plays. So thank you to all of our panelists for participating. And we're going to start with you, Wes. Would you please describe your current role as Vice President of Workforce Solutions at Travelers. And also, it's a two-part question. So describing your current role as VP of Workforce Solutions, but also then getting into how do you ensure that your existing workforce is properly trained and developed to meet both the current needs of the company and its clients and communities that it serves, but also the future needs.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. So first and foremost, it's great to see you. It's great to see some familiar faces for those I haven't met or have an opportunity to work with. I really am looking forward to being a part of this, and I'm really excited to be included. So my department, this workforce solutions thing, let me make sure I explain it, because I think as you may hear the name, it may not automatically connect to the sort of work that we actually are trying to accomplish here within Travelers. So the long and short of it is, many times when I'm asked what I do, I don't even give my title. Instead, what I say is that my job is designed to provide additional brave and safe spaces for Travelers employees. So, another way to think of it is that in many ways, my job is similar to what one might think would be like an office of the ombudsman. So let me just kind of give you a quick kind of breakdown of the 4 sections. And if anybody ever wants to learn more, I can talk about this for days because it's mine. And I really am pleased that I get this opportunity to lead this function within Travelers. So the first section really is this idea of being the company's ombudsman, meaning employees can come and literally say just about anything in a safe space. And I'm going to allow that to be held in confidence. I'm going to preserve their anonymity. Now, you may ask, well, wait a minute. Don't you have an HR department? Don't you have an ethics hotline? Don't you have an employee relations department? Why would you need a separate place? And what I will submit to you is, while these departments I think are very strong, and I know in my heart of hearts that most of the people that work in those departments are going to keep your information safe. They are going to take care of you. They are going to be concerned about trying to help you develop and figure out how you may solve your issues. The truth is, we're just people. And many people, despite being told over and over again that it's okay to go to human resources or it's okay to go to employee relations, many times they won't do so, not because actually of anything that's happened to them or that they've been retaliated against. It's literally because people struggle, particularly in large organizations, to feel comfortable to know that they can speak their truth without feeling like they're going to be retaliated against. So my department was created in 2020 just for that reason. It's an additional safe space. And most of the work that we do, really it revolves around allowing myself and the 2 members of my team to keep an open calendar for people to reach out and express what it is that they're experiencing at Travelers, with my goal of trying to help them work through it. So that's kind of part 1. The second piece of my job is really this idea of putting people in rooms and allowing them to speak truthfully and honestly about their experience in the form of what we call either focus groups or sensing sessions. And the way this works, everyone, is, what I am tasked with doing is basically trying to be a bridge between how employees feel and how managers and management and our more senior leaders think they feel. And sometimes they're totally correct, right? If you think about a corporate environment, many times we'll have these town halls, we'll have these situations where some leader will come up and speak to hundreds of people and say, hey, here's the direction we're going in, or here's what I think we should do. And most people, will listen. And every now and then there'll be that employee, he or she, they'll raise their hand and say, you know what, this is a horrible idea, senior leader, this idea sucks, right? But the truth is that in corporate America, most people in those environments, they don't feel comfortable challenging the more senior leaders, particularly if it's something that the senior leader is passionate about. What we end up doing is, somebody will say something that an employee disagrees with, and then they'll walk out of a meeting, and that employee will turn to someone he or she trusts, and they'll say, boy, this sucks. Why are we doing this? This is a terrible idea. But in terms of saying that out loud, most people, your boss is in the room, your boss's boss is in the room, they don't get comfortable making that statement. So my department helps facilitate these safe spaces so we can speak freely, we can preserve anonymity, and then we take that information and we deliver it back in aggregate form to leadership so that we can then do something, consult on it, and try to make change once we hear that information. The third big area is this idea of, we look at our policies, our practices, and the things that we do, particularly in the HR space, and we look for subjectivity in places where potential unconscious bias can come into play. Hiring, promotions, compensation, right? Who gets to take that trip to get that opportunity, right? Who's on the talent, the top right corner of the talent succession planning, right? And many times, particularly within the corporate environment, many of those decisions, they're subjective, right? They're going to be based on relationships or sometimes bias, as we talked about earlier with the training, that creeps into that decision-making process. So what my group does is we analyze that. We look at our policies, we look at our practices, and it's not always with an eye towards, hey, this is broken, let's fix it. Sometimes it's just making a check. Hey, have we put eyes on this to make sure that we are eliminating the bias where it can come into place where people can lose as a result of subjectivity? The last box that we've been working in is really what I'm proud of, but you can probably tell I'm proud about all the work, is really this idea of, we are hosting and setting up safe spaces to have what we've been calling courageous conversations. And what I mean by that is the sorts of conversations that we were all told not to have at work, right? The conversations about race or politics or gender or equity versus equality or microaggressions, things that could potentially be divisive if not hosted in the proper way. But what my group does, we set guardrails for the conversation, and we really try to get into it by taking a lens of, hey, I don't want to know your opinion on microaggressions, for example. What I would love to hear is your personal experiences. And then we use those personal experiences to not only educate, build empathy within our populations, but it also helps us become closer to one another. We learn about each other. And my business case for all of this work is that we work better together. So so I know people hear workforce and you think I'm doing a whole lot of development and planning and et cetera. But what I really am is I'm an employee experience advocate. Right? That's what my role is. I am employee first, designed to figure out how do we make this place best suit your needs. Your second question, Jay, what I would say is, so at the end of the day, I don't know that I have responsibility over training and development for our employees, but what I do have is responsibility over that safe space. So if you're not getting what you need, you don't feel like you're being trained properly, you don't think you're being developed to the potential that you bring to the table, along with a myriad of other items, right? You're the only person of color in the room and you're trying to figure out why you don't feel heard. You're not a person of color, but you don't understand why you didn't get a bonus this year. Like, we literally take on all of those issues and then work to figure out, hey, can we get to some solutioning here, which may include maybe this isn't the right place for you. But at the end of the day, I am you first, company second, and that's what my department provides.
Wow. Wes, I've known Wes for 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Our sons play basketball together,
Yeah.
each other. And I will say I had no idea of what he did. And far be it from me to suggest travelers change your title, but you're right. Your title does not do justice to your passion and the importance of what you do. I mean, it should be Vice President of Employee Experiences. I mean, what you do is so needed. I'm not supposed to talk, so I'm gonna shut up. But Travelers has tens of thousands. What you do, we could use in our organization with 61 people.
Yeah.
So it is just, thank you for being here. So even more excited about your role as helping to co-chair this, and thanks for starting us off with such a passionate description of your call. I mean, I don't think this is a call, clearly, just from how you described it. So happy to have you kick us off. And now we will ask Andrea, who has corporate experience, but like I said, also is squarely in the entrepreneurial space as a woman of color. And Andrea, what I will ask you, another 2-part question, is what are some of the challenges you face in the business world that are unique to your identity and your experiences? And how did you overcome any hesitations or fears that you may have had when starting a business?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. A really great question, right? I grew up in this community. I went to McDonough School. I went to Harvard High School, went to what's now Capital Community. I went to Central and went to the University of Hartford, all of that part-time at night for 25 years. Right? I grew up in the projects here. I worked at Aetna, Cigna, Mass Mutual, the Hartford, United at Optum, Prudential, and CIA Craft. I've been around this community. So I progressed over my career And what I think I found most challenging is first of all, you know, even within our own Black community, we sometimes divide, right? The haves versus the have-nots, right? So it's tough to find a mentor when within your own community, you're dividing yourself up. So as I was progressing along my path, on my journey, I didn't really have role models. My mother didn't go to college, so she didn't really understand and see the value of that. So I was kind of on my own to not only find resources to accomplish going to college, and I will tell you the majority of my resources came through workforce benefits, right? So tuition reimbursement programs and so forth. But having to go to school at night while my contemporaries were already done with college was a struggle in and of itself. And then of course, progressing, because of course my contemporaries, my peers were farther along after they graduated because they had a degree and I was still going to college. So when I finally did make it to the executive tables, I was a little bit older. And I didn't have a ton of support. I didn't have mentors to go to. There were not, I was typically, when I got to the senior ranks, I was typically the highest ranking person, woman of color, mostly woman of color in my division in these Fortune 100 companies. So I would say that was probably my biggest struggle, was just knowing the right things to say and do, and understanding the politics that no one really tells you about. You find out about it by stepping into it and making mistakes, and you're right, going beyond people by mistake because you're just trying to get an answer and you don't really understand the politics of what that means. You learn pretty quickly, but you know, that has bigger implications to your advancement when you have to learn that way. So I would say those were probably my biggest struggles, but I would also say that I had a lot of people who supported me as well, right? And helped me and pulled me to the side and grabbed me by the collar and said, hey, cut that out. That's not going to serve you. You're trying to get there. You're not going to get there from the way you're doing it. Slow down, you know, and that was helpful to me too. And I would say to folks that have gotten feedback like that, we can sometimes tend to get a little indignant or insulted, and that all of that taught me that when someone cares about you, they tell you how to do it better, right? Feedback is a gift. We've heard that before, but it truly is if someone's taking the time to slow down and say, hey, what you're doing will not serve you. And so that was a really great lesson for me over the course of my career. In terms of fear, I don't really have that in my DNA. So I'm missing a gene. I'm missing the fear gene. My husband would tell you that too. So my husband and I were dating 11 months when we both got laid off from our corporate jobs. He was 50 and I was turning 48. And that's when we started our businesses. And 8 years later, we have opened 3 cafes, and I started my own consulting business about 3.5 years ago. So once we got on the road, we figured, you know what, we're smart people, we can figure this out, and we have. And we've learned a lot on the journey. I would say I think what you have to put against it is your efforts, right? And get people behind you that will support you and stand you up when you can't stand up by yourself. We own 4 businesses now, and we get a ton of help, right? We get help from family members before we could actually pay employees, right? Our kids, our nieces and nephews and friends who love us enough to come work for free at first. And then, right, over time, you earn some money, and then you can pay people, and you can continue to kind of build and grow. And so we don't live from that point of a deficit or fear. We think about, what do we need to put against this? What resources do we need? Who can we ask for help? And it's important to be humble and ask for help, or else you're not going to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So I would just say, those are kind of the things that we think about and what we've been doing over the last 8 years in terms of being our own entrepreneurs. But it's been a very, very fun journey. We wouldn't be where we are without the support of this great community, and we are incredibly grateful for that.
Well, thank you for sharing. And this community is better off as a result of your, both you and your husband, your investment, your generosity, your spirit of entrepreneurialism. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I love this name. So, I mean, she's listed on my paper as Jackie, but Jacqueline, as it is listed in her Zoom box, Gallo is, Jackie, if you would share with us, first and foremost, a little bit about Whitcraft, the organization, and then your role as COO. The two-part question for you: in what ways has Whitcraft worked to create an inclusive culture, and how has that adapted or evolved over time? And also, how can individuals, teams, and organizations work together to challenge some of the systemic biases in a workplace that exists, particularly around those who are formerly incarcerated? We heard this from one of our chairs, the biases that exist with respect to persons with disabilities. And we heard Wes talk. We all naturally have a bias. You know, we think of ourselves as open and generous, and we are, but we also have just inherent biases as human beings. So again, describing Whitcraft, your role as COO, and then you know, the evolution of an inclusive culture over time at the organization, and how teams and organizations and individuals can work together when you talk about the importance of employing and making sure that there are opportunities for those who have paid their debts to society and are now coming back looking to contribute in a variety of ways.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm honored to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I will tell you, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. But I'll do my best. Whitcraft is aerospace aircraft engine component manufacturer. We are located in 5 different states. We have 8 sites. And actually tomorrow we're on the eve of a closing of a merger with Paradigm, which is also an aircraft engine manufacturer. So as of tomorrow, we will be the largest privately held aircraft engine manufacturer in the world. We're doubling in size. We'll, after tomorrow, be 2,700 people-ish, certainly not as big as, you know, Raytheon or Travelers, or, but in terms of private business, we are one of the largest in terms of employment. And also we operate headquartered in the state of Connecticut. So about half of our employees are in the state of Connecticut. My role is I'm the chief operating officer, and that just basically means I'm responsible for running operations across the sites. I have been with Whitcraft for 10 years and have grown along with Whitcraft, and I'm really excited about the merger tomorrow. I got involved with people who were previously and currently incarcerated in 2018. I was a general manager of one of our plants, and I reached out to the local prisons, and so through the info web, and with sort of an interest in trying to help both develop our workforce, but also give people an opportunity that I felt was a underserved pool of talent and population. And somebody wrote me back, and within a few months, we had our first work furlough program in our Eastford facility, which is out near Putnam. And so men were being bused every day from the Willard Cybulski prison. Since then, we have employed over about 100 individuals, and we have now partnerships with Willard Cybulski, Brooklyn Correctional, both men's prisons, and a women's prison, York Correctional Facility. And because I've been involved in this for so many years, I have a few stats that I think are interesting, just so that you guys know, in case you don't already. There are 10,000 people that are incarcerated in the state of Connecticut. And so I feel, you know, we've touched 100 lives, and it's like woefully inadequate, but and also it's not doing anything to prevent people from being incarcerated to begin with. But anyway, this is what we're working with. About 700 women are incarcerated out of that 10,000. before our partnership with the York Correctional Facility in Niantic, which is just women facility, which we started a year ago, the job opportunities for the women specifically were in the realm of dry cleaning and seamstress work. And we are employing them making aircraft engine parts and running, advanced manufacturing equipment. And also for the men, although they were given a bit more opportunity, it's still not enough. The average recidivism, or the average of people who get out of prison in the state of Connecticut, and you can look this up on the OPM website, this is published by the state, after 6 months up to 36 months, there's a 20% chance after 6 months that they return to prison, and after 36 months there's a 50% chance that they return to prison. The people that are participated in our work furlough program have the women have 100% of them continue to work for us post-release, and the program was a year ago, so many of them have been released more than 6 months. And for the men, it's about 90% of them continue to either work for us, or even if they're not working for us, they're not back in prison. So all of that just to say that goes probably intuitively for everybody. It's just a much higher chance that they will be successful in re-engaging our communities if they have a job. And if they have a meaningful job, not just, working third shift at a warehouse where they feel, that they're degraded. And so I've been spending a lot of time, just to answer your question in terms of inclusion. When we first started these programs, our existing employees were very much afraid of having people come from prison on site. There was a lot of resistance to it. And I did a lot of roundtables with individuals to hear their concerns, try to address them, ask them to give it some time and give some patience to it. And actually now everybody is on the opposite spectrum, where they are looking to help. We've got employees offering to drive people that are after they've been released, pick them up in the morning, bring them home, stuff like that. So it's definitely come full circle. And I think a couple of you mentioned that, everybody's, it's the humanity prevails. Ultimately, when people get to interact with these individuals, they see that they really are just like everybody else. And there's actually a sense of pride, I think, that people have gotten from the opportunity to help somebody who is seemingly, sort of like an underdog. And so I think that's also been like a side benefit where the employees have rallied around that. I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions, but I appreciate you inviting me here, and I do my best. I know I humbly do my best. It's not enough, but anyways, we've had some success.
Thank you. You've had a tremendous amount of success. And, when you say you're not an expert, I wouldn't say that you're not an expert. You've got, significant experience, and you all are impacting the incarceration rate, if not the initial incarceration rate. The fact that you've got 100% of the women a year into the program who continue to be not in the recidivism statistics, 90% of the men, is significant. And that notion that these sound to me more like career paths. I'm assuming most of us have at some point gotten on an aircraft and those component parts that we all just take for granted that will operate in the way that they operate and allow us to arrive safely. Companies such as Whitcraft, you as a COO, your employees who now are 100% bought into this program, thank you for sharing that. And as has been said in the chat, just amazing work. Bravo. And we appreciate your presence here.
Much. And if you guys Google us, Whitcraft and like News Channel 3 or Jane Caffrey, you'll see a bunch of videos that showcase some of our employees and their stories, and they're really touching. So
Great. Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So our final panelist that we heard from at the beginning, sharing some thoughts on Black History Month. Again, we'll go back to Pastor Johnson, who in addition to his role as a father, a husband, a pastor, is also a community organizer. And in that regard, Pastor, describe your role as a community organizer, and also share with us how can we ensure that all members of the community have access to opportunities for quality education, jobs, housing. One of my first opportunities to really see Pastor Johnson in action was around some decrepit housing that existed in one of our communities, and to see his activism and passion that brought resolution to something that had been going on for far, far too long. It wasn't easy. It required tenacity and persistence, of which he has in abundance. So, Pastor Johnson, please, again, as a community organizer, describing that role and some of the work that you do to ensure that there is access to those opportunities across the spectrum of our community. And then after that, we may have time for some Q&A, but I want to keep us moving. So thank you. And I turn over to Pastor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. And everyone has done a great job making a claim for their job, man. Wes, talked his way into a job. I'm about to talk my way into a job too, because everybody needs a community organizer. I'm talking about everyone. I think you're going to start seeing the aspects of community organizing, not just being for community, but moving over into corporate in the next 5 years, because community organizers are very important. Let me just lay a context. Community organizing is a process of mobilizing and empowering community members to identify their needs and collectively resolve them. Okay, so that is like the foundation of what I do and what I'm paid to do. So not only do I get to pastor in my community, which is my dad's church of 50 years, over 50 years on the corner of Westland and Barber Street, but I also get to organize through an organization called the Center for Leadership and Justice. And the way is so beautiful, right? It's beautiful because not only do I pastor get a chance to understand the spiritual needs of people, but I also get to use that same power that I'm preaching about to not only mobilize, but empower people to change their circumstances that they're in right now in this moment. Mobilizing is more of, you having an agenda and you I'm an entrepreneur too. I do everything. I'm on a board of education. I do a lot of stuff. Overworked and underpaid. That's what I always say. But mobilizing is getting people to do what you want them to do, right? But when you organizing is getting people to act on their own self-interest and what's wrong with them or what's happening with them in that moment. Too many nonprofits get together and say, this is how we're going to help people, when the community says, we don't really need that help. We need this help over here. Hartford is full of them, full of a bunch of nonprofits that are doing a lot of good work, but haven't really listened to what communities want. And so my job as an organizer is never to go in with a preconceived issue that I want you to work on, that I want you to work on. My job is to listen, to build relationship, and to empower you to act. The golden rule, right? The golden rule in community organizing is never, ever, 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 ever do for others what they can do for themselves. Okay, I want you all to remember that. Because again, we have organizations, if you want your rent paid, there's organizations that will pay your rent. If you need food, there's organizations that will give you food. But the flip side to community organizing is empowering that person in a group of people to ask, why do we need food in the richest state in the country, right? And so what I quickly say about community organizing and accessing housing and education, because I serve on the Board of Education. I'm the deputy chaplain for the House of Representatives. I'm here at the Capitol now in Representative Marion Khan's office. Thank God for her for letting me use our office, because I had a few things to do around here today. But the thing about community organizing that gives us access is we have to ask this question. I'm going to share a story with you just for 1 second. So there's a story of a man fishing by the water. Some of you have probably heard this story hundreds of times, but I love it because it gives an idea of how we get access and how we move the needle. And so as this man is fishing, he sees a baby coming down a river. The man jumps in the water, swims, saves the baby, calls his friend and says, hey, these babies need some clothes. I found a baby, this baby needs some clothes. His friend comes down, brings the clothes. He goes back fishing. He sees another 5 babies coming down a river. He drops his fishing pole, jumps into the water, swims, saved these 5 babies, and said, hey, these babies need some food. Calls his friend, Jay Williams, and said, hey, these babies need some food. Jay comes down, provides food for the babies. He goes back fishing. Another 15 babies come down the river. He calls his friend Wes and says, Wes, these babies need an education down here. Can you come down here and provide an education for these babies? And there's this one Black woman, I'm gonna call her Andrea for this story. There's this one Black woman who goes to this riverbank and looks and says, has anybody gone upriver to see who's throwing the babies in the water? That's what community organizing is not being satisfied with maintaining systems of poverty, but asking the critical question, why is it that we're spending billions of dollars on education, but we still have a pipeline to prison? Why is it that Farmington and Avon can have these wonderful houses, but Bridgeport, Waterbury, New Haven, and Hartford are stuck with all the affordable housing units in the state? Why is it that children still wake up hungry when there's a Trader Joe's down the street, but we barely have a Bravo in our own community? So when we talk about access, we talk about going downriver and asking the hard questions people don't want to ask. It's about going downriver and really challenging the systems. Most of my time at the Capitol is challenging systems, challenging education funding. Why is it that it's like this? Why is it that we sit here and we have legislators that go represent us, but when it comes time to vote on something that really matters, they get cold feet because they have to go back to their districts? Now, I mean, I understand where I am. I understand that Connecticut is 98, 97% white. I know where I am. I grew up in Rocky Hill, where the only place that they will put me in education is in special education because I was the only Black kid in the class. And they said I couldn't keep up. So I understand where we are, but someone has to go downriver in Connecticut and ask these questions. Why is it that in the richest country in the world, there's still a particular group of people still on food stamps and on EBT? So that's what it means to access. When we talk about access, we have to organize the folks that are being affected to have the power and capacity. You know what the best part of my job is? I could be a millionaire right now, but I love people and seeing the light bulb click on in people's mind. I remember we kicked a multi-million-dollar slumlord out of Hartford, and it took 2 years to do. That's one thing I want to let you know. Change is not next week. Change is not next month. Change takes time, right? Because you have to convince a lot of people and structures that are maintained to stop doing what it's doing, right? And so I remember meeting a person that was living in a deplorable apartment. I mean, rats, mice, ceiling falling in, kids got asthma. And when I looked in their eyes that first day, and I said, what keeps you up at night? She's like, my children go to school, but I have to pick them up from the doctor because they have asthma. And I go to the doctor 5 times a month, so I can't keep a job because I got to keep my kids, in and out the doctor's office. And I really can't go to work because every time I go, I got to ask to leave and nobody will fully employ me. And so I said, do you think that we can change this? Her initial answer was no. I don't think we can. I'm going to live like this until I die. And I've never felt such distress or felt so much loneliness in a long time. And I looked at her and said, you're going to win this. You're going to win this. You're going to get your landlord to hear you. You're going to get the federal government to hear you. And we're going to change the housing code and make sure that this person never gets an opportunity to own any affordable housing units in the country. And 2 years later, as this young woman is with Senator Blumenthal, with Mayor Bronin, with all these officials from HUD, celebrating that she got her housing voucher to move wherever she wanted, that moments like that of seeing people who never feel like they have an opportunity to change and engage in these level of politics and in their own conversations around their own interests, actually get to the table and have power is amazing to me. That is the best feeling you will ever have. Someone who had no hope now is empowered to go back to school because they went through the process of kicking their landlord out of town. Someone who feels confident to move from Hartford to Glastonbury and know that they have the ability to fight for themselves when they encounter racist interactions and things. Like, they have the power to fight and defend themselves and not feel like they have to stay in that moment. So that's how we have access, by organizing and going upriver, challenging these systems. It's not easy. It's hard. It takes forever. It takes a long time. But when it's done, Dr. King would be proud. When it's done, Malcolm X will be proud. When it's done, Rosa Parks will be proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Johnson. And thank you to each of our panelists. You all spoke with passion, enthusiasm, wisdom, pragmatism, and things that I know I took away from each of you. So thank you for your participation on this panel. Thank you for your work previous that led up to this. And I hope that each of you continue to prosper and progress. And I know, the rest of us are not only cheering you on, but supporting you and providing whatever contributions we can to ultimately what lifts up the entire community. When our communities of color, when our Black communities are stronger, it strengthens the entirety of the community. And I know that as the CEO of a nonprofit organization, this notion of making sure that, and we've taken that lesson to heart, that because we are blessed with resources doesn't mean that we have all the answers. We don't. The people who have the answers are often the individuals who are closest to the problem. And our job is to listen, to help not mobilize around what we think is the best approach, but to be a part of the organization and the empowerment of people to do for themselves. So thank you all. I will now turn this back over to Anthony, who will lead us to the last 15 minutes with some updates on a couple of important things we want to share with you, and then we will close out on time. Anthony?
All right, thank you, Jay. Thank you all the panelists. I think that was an amazing conversation. I definitely need to get more employers at the table to be able to hear from all the critical feedback that was just previously mentioned. And Jackie, I would like to second Jay's comment. You are a subject matter expert, because what you're doing at Whitcraft and how employers can model and work with vulnerable populations, especially formerly incarcerated individual, I think it's something that could be modeled across the state. And obviously, West, the work that Travelers being done at Travelers could be copied and need to be implemented in probably all corporations and so forth. So a lot of great ideas and a lot of great work that's being done from the panelists. So once again, just thank you for agreeing to participate and then sharing your valued thought leadership around building inclusive and belonging communities. Next, I'm gonna, I know we have about 13 minutes or so, but I had a lot of slides, but I'm gonna probably just go through some of the, provide a few updates on our Women Return to Work plan. So we recently just started drafting our preliminary work plan that really looks at how do we build economic mobility for women post-COVID. And so we've drafted that plan. We've identified some of the areas in needing to build more engaging learning experiences, kind of like some of the work that Wes kind of previously mentioned in the workplace, but then also how do we support them and make sure that they're having a quality job and a quality experience, but then also looking at many of the areas and populations of women who are normally typically distressed. We've also found that, you know, Black women have the hardest experience when it comes to like the workplace and all the intersectionalities and barriers that they typically tend to face, and headwinds when it comes to just workplace and engagement. Then we also found that childcare is a major component. I think I believe it was Mr. Johnson who mentioned that, you know, that the woman that was fighting, you know, the slumlord, and then it trickles down as I can't go to school, I need to take my kid to doctors, and then employers are not being flexible enough to adapt and give that employee the flexibility to still navigate and balance work life. And those are common issues that we found. And then elder care is something else that's very critical in supporting women as they return to work, is building out those support systems for women. So we're in the process of socializing with our stakeholders, and then we'll socialize it directly with our DEIA committee to provide feedback and then send it over to our OPM and then also our other legislative stakeholders as we implement that process. And we are looking to implement a lot of the strategies that are outlined in our plan with our Career Connect programming and vendors that we support to be able to build our skilled workforce over the next 3 years. Next slide, please. All right, so here we are, marketing and branding. I have a lot of slides. I'm probably gonna skim through a few, but just wanna make sure I at least give everyone a good high level overview of where we are with our marketing campaign. And if anyone would like the slides, these will be provided as well. So you can always be able to see some additional slides that are available with more detail and analytics around our marketing campaign. But our overall marketing campaign is directly focused on increasing awareness for Career Connect across all our audiences to drive enrollment in reskilling, upskilling, and sometimes even next skilling. Our primary audience is unemployed and underemployed job seekers, youth, BIPOC, reentry, people with disability, veterans, and women, specifically Black and brown women, who may not always be represented in many of the industries that we are looking to skill, you know, especially around manufacturing, IT. There's a lot of women in healthcare, so we may directly focus on increasing more men in the healthcare industry. So our whole objective is increasing vulnerable population industries that are not commonly engaged as far as untapped talent, to be able to tap into those talent pools. Next slide. So a few of our paid media, and I'm hoping that, you know, we have people on the call who have seen some of our engagement on our tactics. You know, we have, you know, a lot of Facebook, you know, Snapchat, TikTok, Google, just a few up here just to mention. And what we've also found is that our Spanish media buys tend to have a little bit of engagement as it relates to Facebook, and Instagram tends to be a little bit more engaged. But our whole goal is to make sure that we really are tapping into that population that are normally historically disenfranchised and marginalized, to make sure that they have input in some of the job market opportunities that are available to be skilled. Next slide. All right, so some of our marketing ads was out of home marketing. So you probably could see, if you're in the Norwalk area, you might have seen our Career Connect inside both shelter wraps. Next slide. In Bridgeport, Stanford area. And one of the areas too that we wanted to also engage was also in convenience stores. You know, so our whole focus with area was how do we make sure we put some of these touch points in a lot of the, you know, under-resourced and impoverished areas. You know, your Waterbury, your Hartford, your Bridgeport, your Stanfords. I mean your Bridgeport, New Haven areas, and make sure that people that are frequently in those communities, that they engage in convenience stores, if it's a bus station, if it's at a gas station, to make sure that they're hearing opportunities around Career Connect, and make sure that we're driving in directly to our portal, which at that point they're able to get connected directly into their areas of interest, but then also be plugged directly into one of the 5 regional workforce boards and other vendors that are going to be, you know, ready to triage them to the exact right opportunity. Next slide, please. All right, and here is our our social media stats. So we've built up our offices, fairly new, but we've also built up a lot of engagement around our social media to make sure we're getting the messaging out around Career Connect, but then also, as you can see, I'm not going to go directly through the stats, but here are our main channels of how we're engaging. And I saw in regards to a push for Danbury. Yes, we are. Next slide. All right, so this is just some area around some demographic I thought would be pretty cool just to share that about 75% of the engagement on Facebook demographic is women. And as you probably can see, a large part is 45, between age 45 and 45 and 54 and 35 and 44. So there's a large engagement to make sure, and this is intentional, that we're making sure that we engage women back into the workforce as well. Next slide. And this kind of goes the same thing for Instagram. And Instagram, our targeted audience is ideally looking to be a younger middle age, but we've also seen a really good engagement for middle-aged women interested in career opportunities. And it's not always just entry-level opportunities, maybe just transitioning opportunities or looking to be upskilled into a whole other industry than the industry that they left prior to the post pandemic. Next slide. We could fast forward a few of the slides. Okay, and I'm gonna probably just close out on this slide because I know we're ending up on time, but these slides will be shared broadly, so you should be able to go. Anyone is able to go through these analytics, but I think what we found is that we're really big on making sure that we're engaging females. Just reading some of the thoughts, but I think our main focus is making sure that we're engaging all job seekers. Facebook and Spanish insights, because I think one of the biggest things that we found is that our Spanish population has really been very engaged with our elements and our collateral. And I would like to at least probably go to one of the other slides. I'll probably break down some of our demographic data and when it comes to our location where we found the most activity. Next slide. I'll probably skip a few slides. Okay. So for LinkedIn, as you obviously know, LinkedIn has a different kind of profile for individuals. And we want to make sure that, Harford County has, across all our mediums, Harford County has probably had the most engagement. Fairfield County, New Haven, London, Middlesex, Litchfield, Tolland, and Wyndham. Next slide, please. All right, here's another slide on our overall demographic information from all our engagement across just our overall marketing campaign for Career Connect. A few other ones for some of our social media tactics and analytics, but here's where we are when it comes to just overall engagement, impressions, points where we're touching base with individuals to make sure that we're driving directly to our portal, and then ideally just convert them directly to employment opportunities and training opportunities. Next slide.
This is the last one, Anthony.
Okay, beautiful. And I think this is probably, probably a beautiful slide. And here you are when it comes to just, we see like search campaigns. These are where, people are searching for Career Connect, are looking for opportunities around employment. So we recognize that Hartford probably has the largest areas of searches that we found since we've launched our campaign, the New Haven, Bridgeport, Waterbury, and New Britain. When it comes to display campaigns and impressions, displays typically what it might be displayed on someone's screen in these areas, or where it might be displayed as out of home tactics or billboards and so forth. So New Haven is leading when it comes to those locations where it's being displayed across people's screen, and then followed by Hartford, Stanford, Bridgeport, and Bloomfield. And I'll close there because I know we're running up on time, but for anyone else who's ever interested and want to learn more about our tactics and our marketing areas, or feel as if you haven't seen anything around our Career Connect programs, please let me know, as we're looking to probably reposition and make sure that we're tackling every single corner. I know someone mentioned Danbury, but we do have collateral that will be coming out, and there will be a 30-second video commercial that will be outlining our Career Connect. So please be on the lookout for that Career Connect commercial. That's really helped. And the best thing that I can always can share is make sure you create ambassadors to advocate and share this information, because people don't know about some of these opportunities. And Career Connect is going to support a lot of the wraparound supports and services for any job seeker that's going through it. And the boards or the CPOs that are working with this population will have the resources to make sure that there's no barriers, and it's a at no cost program for anyone that's looking to be reskilled, upskilled, and probably next skilled into some new industries. All right, thank you.
Anthony, there was a question in the chat about awareness in our jails and prisons and other facilities. Visibility there.
Yeah, that's a great question too, because we do have a reentry committee, and a lot of this information is shared there. And as it relates to technologies, that's a whole nother conversation when it comes to infrastructure and technology, what could be shared. But we are in a process of developing some programs internally through the vocational village to help people become trained free and put some supports post-release, which Jackie and Whitcraft is heavily involved with some of those conversations as well. So, but I think for a broader conversation, I think there's something that we probably need to look at. How do we really still share some of these opportunities? Connectivity is always the biggest issue, and safety and risk. So, but we definitely need to take a look at how can we mitigate as much safety risk, but then also provide these opportunities in pre-release to make sure once they do transition, there's less likely to recidivate, but then they're also tied closer to these opportunities once they transition. All right, thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Jay, to close this out, but thank you everyone.
Well, it has been, from my perspective, a well executed agenda. Thank you to all the speakers, to the subcommittee chairs for sharing your updates of your charters, the progress. Anthony, for you and the team at the council for what you all do. We can't do it without you. You guys do the heavy lifting in between the meetings that allow the meetings to work. So to all of the team members, I want to say thank you. Appreciate your time, your energy, your effort. So it's 3 o'clock on the nose. We want to be respectful of the fact that you have other things and other obligations, but please enjoy the rest of your day. Remain well, and look forward to seeing you all again at our next meeting. Thanks, everybody.